Hello there, Gareth. How are you doing?
Hey, Doug, doing very well. Good to be talking with you tonight.
Great. Thanks for joining the podcast, the Tech Video podcast here. We're really honored to have you on board and have you talk about your great book, Data Engineering with WS, and wanted to hear your thoughts about it and what inspired you to bring
Yeah,
this book to fruition.
yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I spent many hours writing this book, so I appreciate you giving me the chance to talk a little bit about the process and the book.
Great. So, any thoughts starting with what inspired you to start with a book?
You know, um, I was one of those people, strangely, who always wanted to write a book. And years ago, I used to be in the disaster recovery industry, and I started getting this idea of a book in my mind, and I started writing table of contents and life got busy and I never made it happen. And then a few years back, somebody from Packet Publishing reached out and said was interested in writing a book. So it kind of reignited that passion for wanting to be able to write something to help people learn more about a specific topic. And so, yeah, just kind of worked with them on figuring out, what the book would cover, what's going to be in each chapter, what kind of content we want to do. Spent some time doing that. And yeah, ended up writing the first edition kind of around about 2021. And then the second edition came out towards the end of last year.
Great. I started reading the book and I really like the fact that it starts you from the ground up. You don't need to know really the subject, at least not in depth, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of, I had these two different types of people in mind when I was writing this book. So the one is somebody who's worked in data engineering, but perhaps more like in an on-prem environment or perhaps another cloud, but they don't really have a strong idea about how to do data engineering in AWS. So, this book is definitely good to help those people learn about the AWS technologies. But at the same time, I also wanted to cover those people, perhaps they're just out of college, they're interested in data engineering as a potential career, and they're not sure where to start. And so, yeah, absolutely. In the book, we start out covering really the basics, fundamentals, a little bit of the history, because I think history is useful to understand where things have come from. And then, yeah, go from a little bit of theory to getting right into kind of the modern approaches to data engineering, the tools and services within AWS that you can use. And one thing that I felt really strongly about was having in every chapter a hands-on practical section. So I never wanted this to just be a theoretical book that people kind of can reference. Of course, you could use it like that. But I wanted to make sure that in every chapter there's something hands-on so that somebody who's never done this before, they can go through chapter by chapter and really build out some data pipelines and do some data engineering tasks. And yeah, that was an important goal for me.
And you definitely achieved it because it's a very easy flowing chapter. As mentioned before, from beginners, start getting more and more into details. And then eventually you start getting hands-on experience, which is great. Really great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people like that. It's you, I think, I know I do. And I think a lot of people, it's like you learn by doing. It's great to read. And then, just having references or super important documentation, fantastic. But it's when you get to kind of tutorials and you're like, okay, if I follow these steps, I can build out a pipeline. I can do this transformation of the data. I can, do something I haven't done before. I think that's where kind of the learning kind of really kind of sets in a way. So yeah, that was it was kind of tough coming up with some of those exercises. I got to say that was one of the challenges, but it was good, and I'm glad I was able to do that.
Great. That's definitely shows because even touch data governance, security, cataloging, which seldom gets talked about, much less in depth or at least into some great detail, which you achieve.
Yeah, that was important. I think data governance today, like you hear these horror stories of companies getting fined, millions or hundreds of millions of dollars because they haven't been able to protect the customer data the correct way and they haven't complied with required legislation on that. And so, of course, you could have a whole book, and I'm sure there are many good books out there that cover data governance in depth. But I thought it was important in a book on data engineering to at least have a chapter that kind of delved deeper into some of those data governance topics. And actually, there was something I completely rewrote in the second edition. So, compared to the first edition, I had a chapter on data governance, and I think it was great, but things moved and changed. And that was one of the chapters I felt like this needs to rewrite. My thinking had matured on it. Things had changed within the industry. And so that was one of the ones that was a complete rewrite. There were three brand new chapters that weren't in the first edition. There was a complete rewrite of the data governance chapter. And then for the other chapters, wasn't a complete rewrite, but it was extensive updates. This is the cloud and things move really fast. So nothing stays the same. There's new services, new features that AWS is constantly releasing. And so I wanted to be able to cover that. And so, yeah, updates throughout the book, but the data governance one, super important topic. And yeah, it was good to kind of rewrite that and feel like I added, I think, a little more value and covered that really well in the second one.
Yes, and they moved into the data analytics, all the storage, pipelines. That really was very useful, just that alone, and then touching ML models, that was great.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of covered with that initial section to lay the foundations. And then it was like, let's talk about how do you ingest data? And there's a lot to cover there. You've got streaming data you got to ingest. Some data is batched. There's many different tools in AWS that let you ingest your data. So it had kind of a few chapters covering that. And then we kind of moved on to, you know, this data's good data that comes from transactional systems, like maybe from a Postgres database. And I know that you're an expert on that. And so you're ingesting this data, but you're ingesting lots of data sources and you want to kind of add value from an analytics perspective. And to do that, you've got to join different data sources. You've got to do some kind of transforms. So then there's a bit that covers how do you transform this data to really kind of add additional analytic value for the business. And then we move to, you've got done this now. How do people consume the data within AWS? And we covered things like BI tools, like Amazon QuickSight to visualize data, and all the AI tools that AWS offers, so that you can take your data and you can extract additional value from that using AI and ML with things like Amazon SageMaker. So yeah, that was kind of the first three sections: the data, theory, the data ingestion, data transformation, data consumption. And then for the second edition, I kind of added three new topics that had become kind of really big things since the first edition. And there was a little bit about kind of data ops. How do you use kind of a software engineering approach or DevOps approach to your data pipelines? The other one was open table formats, Apache Iceberg, Apache Hoodie, Databricks, Delta Lake. They're becoming super popular ways of storing your data in a specific table format that makes it work a little bit more like a data warehouse. You can kind of get those ACID transactions, which previously, before those table formats, was challenging to put it that way within a kind of data lake environment. And so your data warehouse and your data lake are kind of merging a little, what a lot of people call the data lake house. Um, yeah, so that was important. And then the other one was data mesh. This is kind of an approach to how you organize data within your company or your organization, and it's all about bringing the ownership of that data closer to the people who produce it, and making sure that the people who are producing maybe some of the transactional data are also creating data products, which are analytical versions of that data. It's kind of really interesting topic because run about, I think, Zamek Degani, who came up with this concept. And then she wrote a book about it and she spoke at some conferences and she had blog posts, really like caught people's attention. This data mesh, like this makes sense. Instead of trying to bring all this data into one central data lake, and then we have team of specialists, they don't really know the data sources. They're not experts in the different data domains. they try not to be experts about everything, and they got to figure out how to transform and find value in this data. And so this whole idea of data mesh was like, well, let's rather have the teams that generate the data create an analytical version of that. And so decentralizing that kind of process. And then, yeah, having the data catalog where this becomes discoverable. You've got these data products, they're well structured, there may be SLAs around it. And then other teams can fund these data products and make it very easy to consume those. And so that was really a big topic. It's interesting. Gartner in 2022 kind of put it as, Gartner's got that. I love what Gartner has with that kind of life cycle of different technologies, how it goes through this hype cycle and then it goes into the trough of disillusionment and then goes to, this kind of plateau where it's actually adding value. And like a lot of products go through that cycle. Um, and they actually mocked data mesh and they said it's going to be obsolete before it gets to the end and provides value. And it was super controversial. A lot of people are like, data mesh is the thing. How can this be obsolete before it really finds value? Um, and, obviously Gartner's doing their best to predict how things are going to go. But I think it's more about maybe the term. It's like we got data fabrics, we got data mesh, we got all these different things. And I think a lot of these different technologies are kind of merging, these ideas and these concepts are merging. I think what data mesh presented is super valuable. I think it's super useful. So it may not be called the data mesh in a few years' time, but I think that idea will combine with other ideas. And some of the really good stuff of the data mesh will definitely last for a long time. But yeah, so I had to put in a chapter on the data mesh because I think it's really a kind of a hot topic within the industry.
Oh, you did great because as you mentioned, you touched data ops, data mesh, all these really hot topic, right? Yes, they change,
Yeah.
they evolve. Just
Yeah.
as people putting it this way, even today, how many organizations have their data cleansed? It's
Mm.
never cleansed. According to them, they talk all the time and they say, "Oh, our data is clean, 100% clean." No, it's not.
Yeah. No. And that's part of data governance. There's lots of those kind of topics like, yeah, data quality. How do we make sure that we're generating quality analytical data? And how do we prevent having 10 copies from some data source, but now nobody knows exactly how they got into their final format? And so there's this concept of data lineage to understand where the data came from, the transformations it went through. So yeah, like you said, everything changes all the time, but things are maturing. And I think there's a lot more discipline being put into analytics and managing kind of data analytics and providing good governance, good data quality, data lineage, so you can understand where it came from. So yeah, I think those are things that companies are taking very seriously now. There's a lot of good tools and utilities to kind of help people do that in an easier way. And it's good to see those type of things maturing and, you know, data, some say, is the new oil. I don't know, maybe it's generative AI, like, it's always changing as well. But, even with AI and generative AI and ML, having good, solid cleansed data is important to all of that. And so, yeah, these are really important topics. And it's good to see a lot of these things maturing and organizations taking them kind of more seriously.
Yes, all the data breaches really emphasize them.
Yeah, it's I personally, I've got a friend who's a CISO of a large hotel company, and I think being a CISO is a really tough job. To make sure that you're protecting everything. But data engineers and people in data jobs can certainly help their CISOs and others by implementing good data governance controls and collaborating with the chief information security officer to make sure that you're complying with relative legislation and requirements and just doing the right thing as a company, really working hard and working in unison with the security teams to do your best to protect your data properly.
Yes, hopefully they'll learn from these. You've got really good topics in the book that I think are going to help others come to realize that it's very, really necessary to have things straight. It's not silent. As many years it's been. But security
Yeah.
does their thing. Data's a thing. Databases do their thing.
Yeah.
It's even illogical to have the data part not be part of
Yeah. Yeah.
it. So
And that's tough. I've seen that with customers I've worked with where, the data analytics team is like, hey, we need data from your database. And the database guys are like, well, how do you think you're going to get it? How much strain are you going to put on our database to extract this? And wait a minute, we got to enable this specific feature before you can read the, redo log so that you can get that data. Um, yeah, collaboration is super important. And the earlier you're collaborating, from obviously speak from data engineering perspective, yeah, the earlier you're reaching out and collaborating with the people that own the data sources, understanding who your data consumers are, what they need, working with your security teams to protect things. The earlier you do that in the process, the better it's going to be for everybody.
yeah, it definitely will help everybody at least have the same mindset, which is still not there, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a journey, all right. I think that will ever get to perfection, but it really is good to see things kind of maturing, and some of these new approaches are really useful to help, yeah, improve a lot of these things we've been talking about.
Yes, and the book goes into all of these trends, emerging trends. They're not fashion. In fact, not even trends anymore as we speak. Maybe when you were writing the book, they were trends. Now they're already being put in place. And it's about time. Big companies are doing it. They're realizing. And I think your book really is going to help up, at least set them in the right.
Yeah, I really hope so. That's like one of my passions is kind of helping to mentor other people. I'm always happy to give time to other people who, if I've got some level of expertise or some experience in life, and I can help somebody else. I always love to do that. And so, yeah, I think part of writing this book was, um, you know, going along with this challenge of like, how do I make sometimes pretty complex topics understandable to people who are kind of newer to them, and really help people go on this journey to learn. Learn and be curious is one of those Amazon leadership principles. Amazon's well known for having this list of leadership principles, and personally, it's one of my favorite. I'm still learning every day. I definitely would never pretend to know everything, not even about data engineering or any other topic. There's always more to learn. And so, yeah, it's great to be a small part of, just like you do with your podcast and the other things that you do, your LinkedIn, really kind of helping people along this journey, providing useful insights, links to good things, writing articles. It's really kind of rewarding to feel like you've been able to help other people along the journey.
Thanks. Yes, that's the whole idea of the podcast, trying to get experts like yourself and speak to the matters really well. Because I've run into other not so good instances in which experts are not knowledgeable in the topics, and that becomes quickly noticeable. But with yours books, it was immediately noticeable. I was like, I need to go.
Awesome.
Speaking with you takes it to another whole level. I mean, not surprised you're doing conferences. I'm glad we got you on this podcast. Very, very lucky to have you, and we're happy to have
Well, I appreciate it. You know how we all feel. We all feel, I think it's pretty common to feel that imposter syndrome. And writing the first book, it's kind of a scary process. You're like, what happens if I put this out there and people just like bomb it on Amazon with 1-star reviews and say, taught them nothing. So it's very rewarding, to put it out there and say, oh, look, getting some decent 4 or 5-star reviews. Oh, look, somebody wrote a comment that was useful. Get a LinkedIn message from somebody saying, they read the book and it was helpful to them. So yeah, that's a super rewarding experience. But yeah, it's scary putting yourself out there because, the first time you do anything, it can be scary. You don't know if you're going to do it well or not. You give it your best shot. So when it works out and, it's pretty positive, it really is encouraging and kind of helps build you up.
you. Yeah, then I think what often gets forgotten is when you put yourself out there, yes, it's scary. And there's always those haters. Oh,
Yeah.
this was bad. It's terrible. But what they don't say is, how come they're not doing it? Really open to hate it, say all these bad things. Hurtful. but how come
Yeah.
are they not doing it? It's easy to criticize when you're not in the front in the stage.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I always, when I'm looking to buy a book, I like to read the reviews and I always kind of scratch my head when somebody like writes, this was a great book, really helpful. And they give it like a 3 star out of 5 star review. And I'm like, wait a minute, that was a great book and was really helpful. Why are you giving it 3 out of 5? And then there'll be those people, if you don't leave a comment, they're just like 1 star, didn't like it. So yeah, you're always going to get the haters out there. Um, a few years ago, I was speaking at an AWS event and it was on YouTube. And, there weren't a lot of comments, but like one of the only comments was like, it was something along the lines like, I really hate that PowerPoint template. I'm like, okay, well, I'm sorry. I hope the content was helpful, but sorry you didn't like the PowerPoint template I was using. So yeah, you never know when you're putting yourself out there. But, for anybody out there that's, thinking of trying to put something out there, I say go for it. Like you got to give these things a try. And yeah, as you said, Doug, you're always going to have some haters, but if you really put yourself into it and you do your best, you're going to help people and you can have people who appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. It's scary. Definitely takes a lot of courage to do it. But also the other part of it is, yeah, you might have some hiccups on the road. You might stumble. You're gonna get better. You're gonna learn from it. That's a big thing.
So, well, yeah, for sure. So the first edition of my book, I was happy with what I did. I felt I did a good job, but it was kind of nice to have this opportunity to do the second edition. In the first edition, there's a GitHub site that goes with the book. That's got, some sample code and those type of things. And there was this one specific exercise in one of the chapters that was definitely the one that most people struggled with because I'd get comments on GitHub or, people would open a support topic on the GitHub saying, oh, I tried this and I couldn't get it to work. And I generally work with them and, would get it working in the end. And so, yeah, it was great. I learned something. So in the second edition, I created a cloud formation template that can help people deploy some of the complicated stuff automatically, and make that better. So yeah, start somewhere, give it your best shot. And then, like you said, you're going to get feedback, you're going to learn. And then, if you keep doing it, keep at it, you're just going to get better all the time.
And that's one of the best pieces of advice. Just keep on going. Learn from it.
Yeah. No, for
Nobody
sure.
fails. And I'll win it the first
Yeah,
time. That's how you learn.
exactly. Exactly. And you're never going to do anything great if you don't give it a try. So absolutely, you got something you want to do, you got to give it your best shot.
Definitely. So great. You definitely have experience writing. It's very clear on this book and in the second edition it shines. Already looking forward for the next edition, probably third or fourth. Or any ideas on that or you working on that?
Nothing yet. I'm taking a bit of a break. I, I, I enjoyed the experience, but it is a lot of work to write a book or even to write a second edition and update it. Um, this one only came out in October, so I think I've got a little bit of time before, we get to third edition. So absolutely, not ruling it out. Could definitely happen. But we'll see how things go. I don't know. It's great to be able to do this YouTube podcast with you today. Maybe at some point I'll do just a few short YouTube videos on data engineering topics. But yeah, it's great that we've got so many opportunities these days. There's books, there's blog posts, YouTube, LinkedIn, so many different ways that we can kind of be a little creative and express things and help others to learn. So yeah, I'm on pause at the moment, but I'm kind of excited about the possibilities going forward.
Great. Yeah, it definitely shows. Edition of it because it'll have even more material, which is great.
Yeah. And, as we all know, wherever you are in the IT industry, things change quickly. Nothing stays the same. And so, yeah, a book that was written 5, 6, 7 years ago, obviously there are exceptions. There are some books that come concepts and approaches that are extremely valuable over a long period of time. But I think when you're getting like down to technology, whether it's a book on Postgres or a book on AWS data engineering. Um, yeah, things move quick. So yeah, there's always going to be opportunity for updates and bringing out the latest features and services in future editions.
Yes, definitely. It's just like with our careers, we remember when we started, those more really big clunkers out there,
Oh yeah,
laptops. I remember the first laptop, I was so amazed. It was a little, pretty much briefcase, top
yeah,
down, and floppy disk come out. And they were like,
that's
whoa,
right.
that's amazing. It's such a great villain. Can't find
I know.
it.
It's incredible. I mean, I know I'm aging myself here, but when I was like 10 years old, I got a Commodore 64 and it was amazing. I had tape drive connected to it and put a tape in, a cassette tape. And maybe some people are kind of wondering what I'm talking about there, but yeah, there was and it was 64 kilobytes of memory in the entire computer. I mean, it's crazy to think of. And I loved the games that used to play on my Atari and my Commodore. And I like you look at the virtual reality and how realistic the games are and the graphics is just, it's incredible. So it's an exciting industry to be in because it's always changing. It's always moving forward. Things are getting better. So yeah, I got to say, I love being in this industry and love the fact that we're always able to keep learning.
That's one thing that we always have to be on the forefront there. Things change all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to admit, there was a point in my career where I think I stalled a little. Um, I got to it was come to a place, worked with fantastic people, enjoyed what I did, but I'm not sure I was learning and keeping up as much as I should have been. And at some point, I kind of woke up a little bit and was like, I need to make some changes here. Um, and so I changed jobs and I got into a different environment where you know uh, the last 7 years I've been like learning things every day. It really never stops and it's awesome. So yeah, that's kind of my career advice sometimes to younger people is just, you know, um, make sure you keep learning, whatever it is, find new challenges. Don't get too much. Even it's easy to get comfortable in the job because you're really good at it and you're working with great people and you like your manager. Those are all fantastic things, but don't get so caught up in it that you kind of get a little stuck. You want to keep learning at whatever pace you're learning. There'll be different parts of your life where you're learning a lot, and the other parts where you just reading a few blogs every now and then, and it's all good. But keep learning, kind of keep moving forward. It's super important.
No, and I'd even take it to the next level, saying that it's all great advice that you're giving. There are a lot of, including, I know a lot of acquaintances that don't, myself included, and can't blame myself entirely. A lot of it has to do with self, but also a lot of the times, like I say, it's you are who you are around with.
Yeah, for
And that
sure.
has a lot. I remember a few times organizations, it was just sailing. You were just feeling that you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, yeah,
The realization saying, well, let's stay there with them and sail with them, be at risk. Because if you take a good break in technology nowadays, just a year, you just fall back behind so much that it's hard to catch up.
yeah, it is, and that's why like you're saying, like even if you're not you know, getting 12 certifications in a year, which I certainly have never done. But sometimes you see people on LinkedIn and you're like, what? They got like all 12 of these specific certifications, and that's fantastic. Obviously, nothing wrong with that. But it's okay if you're not doing that either. But if you're reading some blog posts, you're keeping up with, reading about what trends are coming up for the next year and then exploring those a little bit, watching some podcasts, reading some books, as long as you're doing something and, there times where you've got the time in your life where you can go and spend a lot of time getting certifications and that, which is fantastic. But, you know, you should always make the priority to at least be doing something. Like I said, blog posts, your podcasts while you're, on the train or in the car or whatever. Like you can always do something to make sure that you're learning something. Yeah, and you keep your eye on the future, like where your part of the industry is going.
Yes, definitely. Because as you said, certification is great. Learning is great. A lot of the times, at least in the personal aspect, I've seen that A lot of certifications, it's a lot of theory.
Yeah,
You can get
it
to apply.
is. Yeah, exactly. And, some companies consider those certifications really important and I think it's good to do them, but yeah, you can theoretically pass a certification and never have like got hands on with it and really have no real world experience. Um, but yeah, but certifications can also, if you do have hands on real world experience, certifications are a nice way to kind of put a check mark and show others or show future employers that I've got the hands on experience and I've got this certification to prove it. But yeah, I go through stages. And at one point, I had, I think, like 4 AWS certifications were current, and then they expire after a while. And so now I'm back on the journey. It is just brought out a new, um, actually, I think it's coming out in March, a data engineering associate certification. But there was this period where they had a beta version of it available. And so I took that. It was kind of scary because it took about 6 weeks to get the results. And I was like, it's going to be really embarrassing if I wrote a book called Data Engineering with AWS and then I go and fail the exam. And I took it at the last minute. So I didn't really have much time to prepare specifically for it. Luckily, I passed. So that was good. But I think that's coming out and going to be available sometime in March. And so, yeah, for people who are interested in data engineering, look out that certifications coming out. There may be something that you want to look at doing if you want to just kind of show future employers that you've got some certification and hopefully some hands-on knowledge as well.
Definitely helps. There's so many careers nobody had heard before of DevOps and DataOps and MLOps and DevRel. So there's many options out there now that there's more coming out, I'm pretty sure soon. We just don't know yet.
Well, one of the newest ones I've heard about is like a prompt engineer, for all this new generative AI, where like your speciality is knowing how to write the right prompts for these AI kind of chatbots or these AI large language models. So yeah, I don't know much about that topic, but it's super interesting. Yeah, there's always something new. So yeah,
They're staying on the forefront. That's part of the price of being IT.
it is right. That's so true. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, this is all great advice, Gareth. Any other additional topics, advice you have for everybody on the podcast?
Um, you know what I'll very briefly cover, just because one of my colleagues asked me recently, and I hadn't really given much thought. He was like, "What do you think in 2024 are going to be trends within data engineering?" And so I gave it a little thought, and I wrote out a Slack message to him outlining some of them. Um, some of them we've already talked about on today's podcast. Data mesh, I think, again, companies are looking to implement data mesh, and I think that's going to continue in 2024. We're going to continue to see companies wanting to move to that kind of approach. Um, and it's pretty tough to implement data mesh technically. I mean, it's not like you can't just buy a product that, especially for a large scale organization, when you're talking about very large enterprises, you can't just buy a data mesh solution. It's kind of something that's going to be built out. But I think we'll see companies continuing with that and maybe data fabric and data mesh kind of merging. Open table formats, which I mentioned earlier, looks like Apache Iceberg, maybe kind of winning the most adherence and becoming maybe the standard. But Apache Hoodie, there are some very large companies with large scale Apache Hoodie projects. So as far as open table formats, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. But again, more and more organizations are going to be looking to implement open table formats. Um, and then the obvious one, again, we've referenced a few times, is just generative AI has been applied everywhere. I've got WhatsApp, which is a messaging app. I see there's like a little generative AI assistant in there. Google's got the Gemini, and there's obviously ChatGPT and all this. And then, everybody's looking to build this into products as well. So at AWS, they've got something called Amazon Q that has been integrated into a lot of different products, including analytic products. And so with Amazon Redshift, which is a data warehouse, and I've got this preview of this Amazon Q Assistant. So instead of writing the SQL query yourself, you can describe in natural language what you're wanting to do, and it will generate some SQL for you. And I think all of these things are still kind of experimental. It's interesting, your results may vary. I don't think it's going to give you perfect SQL every single time, but it may help you get started or it may help you fine tune something. But I think throughout this year, we're going to see um, more and more Gen AI being integrated into analytics. And I think it's probably going to get better and more useful. Some of it's just there, I think, as kind of a test bed, kind of beta thing. But I'm thinking, throughout this year, we're going to see it incorporated everywhere and hopefully getting better and better and adding more and more value. And again, I don't think generative AI is going to replace a data engineer or a database admin or a DevOps guy or anybody, but hopefully they're going to improve our productivity and help us along the way. But who knows? None of us can predict the future, but definitely interesting. And I definitely think we'll see kind of a lot of stuff happening around Gen AI this year. But yeah, it's always an interesting industry. It's always kind of fun to see how it goes. It's always fun to read everybody else's predictions and, a year later look back in them and see like, were they right or wrong? Um, so yeah, who knows where we'll go, but interesting times for sure.
Oh, we can do another podcast on that. Just alone, that should be around 30 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And well, we can look back next year and see how much of this came about, and who knows what this year holds. There could be some other new technology that suddenly captures everybody's interest. But yeah, always fun.
Just like with the video game industry. Some come up, Sega used to be, it was going to take over and then here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's always something new.
Great. Oh, this has been a great, such a wealth of information, Gareth. Really appreciate talking with us. Wondering, do you have any additional final thoughts or additional
Um,
comments?
Well, look, really, I guess the only thing would be to echo what I was saying is like just keep learning, keep, looking for those resources, that help you along your journey. Yeah, just watch out about getting too comfortable and not growing. Catch yourself if you're kind of in that place. We're so lucky with everything on the internet and YouTube and everything else. There are so many ways that we can keep learning, and sometimes you still got to put effort in to make it happen. But I guess that's what I'm saying. Just keep learning.
Great. That's great piece of advice for everybody, all the podcast listeners. I'm looking forward to the next time to having you on the show and let us know when you wanting to do another one and
Yeah,
organize
well,
something.
fantastic, Doug. I appreciate you having me on. It was a great conversation and discussion tonight.
Great. Thanks. And we'll talk soon then, hopefully.
All right, great. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.